Okay. So we're going to cover chapter 3 today, which we're not going to spend a lot of time in here. It is the kinematics of fluid motion, basically accelerations, velocities. This is a need to know a little bit, but not drastic need to know. He says the chapter objectives are for Lagrangian or Eulerian descriptions. We'll talk about that. Classify the flows and show how to express in terms of their Cartesian or streamline components. So let's head on. He talks about laminar or turbulent. You've probably experienced this before. In a laminar flow, the particles remain very organized and don't divert very much from their general path that's dictated by a high pressure to a low pressure. This is a situation where turbulent flow is a situation where the flow became so fast that the randomness took over and you get a little bit of chaos, which is determinable. It's not, but it takes a lot of effort to determine the actual velocity there. With this, what you see is this is profiles for laminar and turbulent flow in between two plates or inside of a pipe. What you find is very organized. Here what happens is a particle may be moving here and jump into a slower lane, so to speak. Imagine if these are lanes of traffic, and when it gets bumped into a faster lane, it bumps the rear end of a particle. So moving from here over into another lane, so to speak, that's faster, you slow it down and it speeds you up. So changing lanes constantly in traffic will cause this type of flow pattern. Imagine if it was traffic and this was a parking lane and this was a parking lane here and everybody drove smoothly, on average you would get a parabolic profile. Turbulent flow can be seen from a candle like this. Comes off pretty smooth, and then the unsteady nature comes in. It turns out fluid mechanics equations are nonlinear. He's discussing here the fact that the velocity can be a function of the position here, the coordinate position, and time. Here he's saying the velocity is a function of x and r, where x is this coordinate, but it can be a function of any coordinates. Oops. He's got, you can have steady, uniform flow, which means your velocity profile is pretty much uniform across. Mostly that's an assumption. Steady, non-uniform flow. You can have time dependent, which is unsteady, and unsteady uniform flow as well. I'd say go in and read this, but these are, here, let me use the control key. what these are streamlines. Velocity field is in the upper streamlines, and what you find out is you could almost consider these, the particles do not cross this barrier here, so consider the fact that this in fact is a small pipe, which is what he shows below, meaning that what happens is this certain amount of mass here remains the same. It stretches out because it became thinner, and because of that it goes faster there. And so these streamlines can be considered individual stream tubes, as you could say. And there's an equation for a stream tube. It's basically you might have a particular velocity, and the velocity is always tangent to its path here, so you can get path lines. And so this is a situation, if you look real close, this is a situation where you have the x as a function of time, so you can take its derivative. So what you're doing is you're following a path. Particle moves like this, you're following it. Its velocity at any particular point is the tangent to that line. So that's what this is showing, and it will have an x component, the x component here. The velocity will have an x component, and it will have a y component, just like what's shown up in his drawing up here. You're seeing the x component here of the velocity and the y component here. Usually it's listed as u, v, and w in the x direction, y direction, and the z direction. As we go along the path lines, hang on a second, let me grab a quick. I'm going to pause for about 5 seconds here as I move around. Okay. Well, I'm back, but I'm not. Okay. So he talks about streak lines, but the path lines, streak lines, and streamlines all coincide for steady flow. He goes into optical methods of determining this. This is, you've probably seen this on a hot day, the temperature gradation. You can see the shimmering of the optical change, and you can see the heat coming off of a car engine or things like that. This is what this is. It's basically called a Schlerian, or some people, a shadow graph or something like that, or a Schlerian. Been around for a long time. I don't know, so I don't want to spend. Computational fluid dynamics is kind of a new area, relatively speaking. I spent quite a bit of time in there in years gone by, but it's essentially an extension of CAD modeling, in which you can put a CAD model into a simulation and run the simulation to determine the pressures. This is obviously some weird looking automobile. You can determine all the flow characteristics around it, the pressure on it, and so as we go in here, what is a Lagrangian description or a system approach? A system approach, like in thermo, what you did is you took a cylinder. You started by taking a cylinder. You put a weight on top of this cylinder. You had a certain pressure in there. So I just went ahead and started. I'm in 3, so it's going to be boring. So.
I was going to say I'm going to catch up by watching the lecture.
Okay. So, in a systemed approach, you're tracking the particle. In other words, the position of a particle going through flow is known as a function of time, and only a function of time. So if you want to find the acceleration or something, you first could find the velocity by doing this, and then you could find the acceleration by doing that. Second derivative.
Well, the derivative of the velocity.
Yeah.
But the second derivative of the entire base.
Yeah. And the key here is Lagrangian means that you're tracking the particle. However, most people, well, I'll take that back and say almost all people that I know of over the years in fluid mechanics. Now in dynamics you do this a lot. In fluid mechanics you don't. What you do there is there's Eulerian, and that is a situation where you turn on a wind tunnel. This is a bad drawing of a wind tunnel, but you got a section here that's glass. This is all not glass. You put your model in there and you stare at it. So everybody's staring at it, and so you look at the velocity by staring at something. The difference being is this, and this is the major difference. Let's see if I can shrink the page down. If maybe he's got some extra room here. And I just use this right here. So if you were staring at it and say you were entering the wind tunnel and it looked like this. So let's say it was all glass and you were staring at this spot right there. That's your spot you're staring at. And as it goes in, say the velocity, just make up a number, is equal to 10. And you keep staring at it, you're over here, and you're staring at it, and you just see it as 10, and you say, oh, velocity is always equal to 10, therefore it's not accelerating. But you were staring at it. You were staring at it, and because you were staring at it, you thought it was not accelerating, but you didn't look around it. So what you find out back here and back here, so up here maybe it's 15, and I'm just making this up, but maybe it's 5 right back here. So the other person who is in there, he's tracking it. So he's saying, okay, it was 5 here, it sped up to 10, and then it sped up to 15. So it's accelerating. It's accelerating because at one point, velocity at, I'm just making this up, time is equal to 2 seconds was equal to 5. Velocity at time is equal to 2.1 seconds is equal to 10. And velocity at t is equal to 2.2 seconds is equal to 15. So the person who's tracking it is living in the Lagrangian world. And the Eulerian person, which that's, okay, well the word's up there, here. It's up there. So there's Eulerian description. So as you do that, how do you get around that? And it turns out what you got to do is train your eyes back a little bit to the left and train your eyes a little bit to the right. And so you got to stare at a field. And what you find out is, you know, velocity. Okay, well here, let me make or use this little white area. So velocity, time rate of change of the velocity is equal to the acceleration. But you're not in that realm. You're in this realm where you're staring at, say you're staring at a particular place. We'll call this x. dx dt. That's still equal to the acceleration. So now you can look to your left. So this is looking to your left. Look to your right. Okay, you can actually take this derivative by looking to the left and seeing it's 5, looking to the right, see it's 15, look in the middle, see it's 10. But this term is actually nothing more than the velocity itself. So if you're Eulerian, your acceleration kind of looks like velocity times the change in velocity with a spatial derivative. So if you think about it, let's just say that the delta x here, I'm just going to make stuff up, 1 unit. So then the acceleration there that this guy right here is staring at it with becomes 10 because that's the center. And then looks like it changes velocity 5 over 1 or equal to 50, roughly 50. Now if this were very, very, very small units, but this is basically a approach that fluids takes, is they look at it from a Eulerian perspective, which means you have to look at a field, you have to look at all the points and take a snapshot of it. And that's actually done, and he may actually put that, hang on a second, let me get rid of this. I wish there was a way to just push a button and it would all disappear, and there probably is. So what he's kind of showing you is he's looking at the velocity field, like all the particles at time 1 and time 2, and even if they're exactly the same, you can still have acceleration. So it seems weird, but that's the, oh, and there's some, let's see if they've got a, okay, I'll tell you what. Here, let's see if I can, this might be, okay, particle image velocimetry. I don't know how good the image is here, but what you do is you take a laser sheet. You can buy lasers that, you know, you can buy these point lasers, but you can also buy a laser sheet, and then you seed the flow, put particles in it. You've probably seen that before if you had a real bright LED and it's dark around you, and you turn it on and you see particles flying around you.
Like dust?
Yeah, like dust.
Yeah.
And so when you see that dust, if you took snapshot after snapshot, like real quick, you could actually see the particles moving, and from that you could determine the flow field.
Particularly of the wind and that.
Yeah. And so that's,
it could be anything really, but
yeah. And that's the part of this thing. You put some seeding particles, some kind of dust. Depending on what it is, if it's air, it's a little easier. If it's water, you have to make sure that the particles that you put in there don't sink or float. And then you have to have a real high-speed camera, and you have to have the lasers like, let's see, you have to have a laser that'll produce a sheet. So what you see, okay, so the green arrows are put on top of it. The little white dots are, so what you would get from this, you'd get an image, and you could do it one of two ways. One way is have an exposure that lasts for, like, you know, I'm just making this up, maybe a half a millisecond. And then each particle would become a streak. But if you knew the exact size of the particles that you seeded it, you could actually figure out from that streak length, you know, the actual velocity of that particle. And that's what the green is. The green that he's got here is an image analysis by a computer that basically looks at it and figures out the flow field from those little streaks. I've seen them where you can take multiple pictures over and over, and I've seen them where one, you take a picture, hold the frame, and let off. But the lasers are pretty powerful. Here, let's see. Let's see. Laser sheet. I don't know. I misspelled that, didn't I? No, I didn't. Oh, yes, I did. But it knows to do that. Let's see what we get. So that's a good picture right there. If I hold down the control key, no, hold down. Whoa, wait. It's hard to see the. Oh, I hit the wrong key there. Here's the control key. So you can see the origin of the sheet coming. They're probably way up above. And so there's the 3 sheets. So it's basically an entire sheet of laser, and you can see the vortex. Inside that, you probably can see, oh, you can see the shadow on the ground too. You could probably see the interactive wind tunnel applet. Okay, tunnel says applet. Download the applet. Well, if it's an applet, would I just not be able to? Is that it? Oh, it's a Java. I don't think I want to run a Java. But, okay, I have to use this one. Wind tunnel index. There's a laser sheet. Laser Doppler. We've got one of those in our fluids lab. It's just, and you don't see it that well. We've got hot wire anemometers, which actually, hang on. You see hot wire? Hot. H-O-T.
Hot wire velocity probe?
Yeah, where is it?
It's under the instrumentation.
Oh, here we go. So yeah, if you look at it, okay, so it's got these. This is really, really, really blown up. You can tell that's 1 centimeter. You go and look at them and you pull them out of the cabinet over there. You cannot see the wire. It is so thin. It's like 5 microns. And so the fact that it's so thin, you have to kind of move it around and have a light source in order to see a reflection. I mean, your eyes are not good enough to actually see that.
How do you know when it's broke?
Well, the way you know it's broke is, okay, so you're basically putting a current through it, and you'll heat it up, and then it measures based on its resistance. It'll get a temperature, so you can back out the velocity from it. You basically you calibrate it, and then you basically back out your velocity. When you put a cross there and you get like it's like infinite, it's like, wait a minute, you can't put a current through it, so it must be broken. And so this instrument will tell you, oh, something's wrong with your hot wire, and usually it means you bumped it. You got to be real careful, because you just bump it like that, it'll break that wire. Luckily, I've played with those before. I have luckily never broken one. It's several, back in the day, it was several $100s to get a new one, because somebody, that's a really, you've seen those people that tie fishing lines. That is nothing compared to putting a hot wire probe back together. I mean, this happens under a microscope. So consequently, they're kind of expensive, you know. Not as expensive as some of the other stuff. There's a Schlerian, which the Schlerian is basically, it's like if you see heat shimmering on the top of your car in the middle of the summer, what you're looking at. If it's all uniform temperature, you don't see it. But if you see a hot source and a cold source, you'll see this shimmering effect, and that's what this is.
Or like pavement being extremely hotter than the
Yeah.
ambient temperature, just due to its color or whatever. But
Yeah.
You can watch it bounce like mirage.
Yeah, it's just like a mirage effect. That's exactly what that is. So I mean, it's used well, especially for supersonic flows. Oh, build your own wind tunnel. Okay, that would be.
I like the disclaimer.
What is a disclaimer?
Technical disclaimer. It's got one written in.
Oh, where is it?
Dead center of the top blue.
Oh, I see it.
I don't know what that is yet. It's got to cover the butt legally.
Yeah. So, Little Smoky. Somebody built a Little Smoky. Oh, okay. Check it out. You can see, it looks like a paper airplane, and you can see the vortex rolling off of it. That's kind of cool. So somebody built Little Smoky. Make your own bales? Let's see. Page not found. That is at a location called fi.edu. Okay, build your own one. Corporation for Educational. Oh, these are old links there. Aviation. Okay, Wandering Wind Tunnel. To be transported in the back of a pickup large enough for meaningful data. 6 students from Barberton High School were selected to work in the Wandering Wind Tunnel. Wonder if they've got, okay, so here you go. Viewing windows. Somebody stands on the back of the truck. And there's your intake. And there's your honeycomb to take the turbulence out. And do they show any pictures of anyone standing on the back of the truck? No. Aviation High School wind tunnel. They built their own. It's actually not that hard. It's hard to make them like super student wind tunnel gallery. Well, there you go. That one looks pretty good. Looks fine to me. Tell you what, let's do. That makes me think. I've actually seen this one. Let's see. The Wright brothers made their own wind tunnel. I don't see. Let's see. Oh yeah, there we go. So that was their wind tunnel they built back in the over 100 years ago. A wooden box. That was pretty much it.
How do they view it though?
How do they what?
How do they view the wind tunnel?
Looks like it's a stand up and look down a piece of glass. So where's the? Okay. So anyway, there we go. So there's a glass window on the top. Let's see. The entrance, what is the... Okay, so there's 2 places this is at. There is a Wright Brothers thing in Dayton, Ohio. Here. And then there's that's where they actually lived. Let's see. What if I just click that original site of the Wright brothers? Okay, can I not make it go? There we go. Really close. How do I make? Okay, so this is not. This is math. Okay, so I'll tell you what. Okay, now let's do. That might be a little easier to see, because now I can do like that. So that's not the one. There was one downtown. So there was the cycle shop. Okay, that's the cycle shop that they originally had. And of course, I used to work here. That's where I used to work. So the Air Force Base came up as a result of it. Oh yeah, and that's right, they had a... None of the pictures are... But if you go there and you go at the end of the Air Force Base, let's see if I can find it. What you'll find is the Air Force Museum. And in it, you'll find just about somewhere in there is the Wright brothers stuff. Oh, and they have little mannequins, that's right. It's broke into two sections when you come in the door. You can go to the left or right, but you get to come back and go to both. Look at that thing. So that's supposed to be the second largest airplane museum in the world. The largest is the Smithsonian. So I've gotten way off topic, but we're not going to do much as far as problems in 3 anyway. So here he's got a situation where he's got two-dimensional flow defined by this. So if you look at it, the fact that there's a Y here and there's no X, it gives you an idea that it's kind of reflected about this. The flow is reflected left, up and down. And so what that does is it kind of confines the particles to move this way. So the particles move along this path. Oops. Each one of those blue lines, which are the streamlines. So then if you really think about it, this is the way they used to think in the old days, which was okay. So you have a slug of fluid. I wonder if I can just touch that. Okay, so you have a slug of fluid sitting right here. And it went to here. And then so many ever seconds later, it ends up out here. So since the mass of that's the same, you notice it collapses into a pancake here. It slows down and then speeds up, or it starts at a speed, slows down till it gets about right here, and speeds back up. So these stream tubes are tubes that are separated by the streamlines, and you could almost consider them to be weird little pipes that the flow goes down. If that's the case, you can figure out some information about like the mass flow through this thing. And so that's there in the old days. What I mean, I've actually seen people do this. They'll take an object, and it's surprising how well you can actually do this. You can say, well, I think this particle is going to hit it. I think the neighbor particle is going to come up and go over it and go back this way. The neighbor is going to do like this, and then his neighbor is going to do like that, and eventually you'll get out till they're about equal. And they used to go in here and look at the area of these little sections and figure out the velocities, and you could get pretty accurate just by just approximating in your brain about what it should look like. And you could figure out information that way. And you could put up a field and say, well, this is about what I think it's going to do. It's going to do this. Along here, it's going to do that. And I've seen them do it. I kept thinking when I saw them doing it that this was the craziest thing I've ever seen. But it actually turned out to be pretty reasonable. But that was from someone who was educated in the 40s and 50s. So that's what they did. And it worked out pretty well. But when you get to unsteady flow, it doesn't work well. So that's why this section is a little bit less used. Okay, so fluid acceleration. Here's your change in velocity with respect to time. And now you have an acceleration that comes from the unsteady, but you also have a change in velocity that can occur with a position. And that's what I was talking about before. If you had perfect steady flow, you would still have an acceleration if you were staring at it. And basically, he's kind of coming down and saying, I have a control volume that I'm staring at, this funny looking shape, and if you go in and look at it, you actually have two terms in the acceleration. You have the local, or what I'd like to call time-dependent part, and you have what he calls convective acceleration, but I would just call it a part of the acceleration that has to do with the Eulerian framework, just staring at it. And what you notice is this term right here is why you have weird behaviors, because if you look at it, it's non-linear. You have a V term times a V term. So that's what makes fluids so weird. If it wasn't for this term, everything would you could use superposition on everything. But you can't use superposition because it's nonlinear by definition. And so then he goes into 3 dimensions, and actually 3-dimensional flow, of course, has three physical dimensions and time. And so your acceleration has a change that is associated with the change in time, the change which is associated with the change in the velocity with respect to x, and this will be the velocity x, this will be the velocity in the y, and this will be the velocity in the z. Usually they're written as u, v, and w. I don't know what this book does. He uses u, v, and w. So he's using a u, a v, and a w for the velocities along the coordinates. And so when you get to that point, that's where you can do a CFD analysis and get the results out of it. And I don't even know if he does any of that. Let's see. He goes through and solves a few problems. Streamline coordinates. Okay, so that's setting up a coordinate and then defining normal and tangential. Let's see. Usually that's okay, but so here's a streamlines over a car, and I can't tell. That's a BMW, I think.
So is that like? Can you go back for that streamline for just a second?
Sure. Wait a minute.
Question.
Oh.
See if I'm understanding right.
Okay. I think I went
So
there. Wait a minute.
it's got
Oh.
I think that was it. If you got your laser pointed at it, and you've got your fog or whatever blowing through your wind tunnel.
Usually these things, or believe it or not, there's some person standing here holding a pipe, and smoke is coming down the pipe and comes out these pipes. And so you can move that pipe up and down. I've seen people do that. So in those particular analysis, this is more of a quantitative. So they're just kind of looking to see, like if it goes back here and it swirls around behind this thing really bad, and they're like, okay, we've got to do something to change the way the body looks.
Change the direction.
Yeah. But if you want real qualitative results, you got to put a lot of sensors on it, on the body itself. Pressure sensors all over it. They even now have pressure sensitive paint. So you spray paint an object, a plane, boat, car, whatever, stick it in the wind tunnel, and based on the pressure it feels, it'll change its color a little bit. And then you can take a picture of it and get the profiles. The reason you do that, the reason they're doing a lot of this now, and they've been doing it since I was in this field back in the 90s and early 90s. And the reason they started doing this is that CFD was coming along, and then they wanted to, there was a big deal back then, you have to validate your computational model with somebody who did an experiment. And so they started putting a lot of money into, pressure sensitive paint and all this sort of stuff. If you go look for, I think I just misspelled everything, but yeah. So now, you can actually, back at that time, you couldn't. It was just basically starting off. Here's 2009. It goes back further than that. So this is not comprehensive at all. Pressure sensitive paint. How does pressure sensitive paint works? Science Direct. So let's see what we got there. This will be actual journal articles. This is 2011. It was a little bit before then. So how it works, and there are certain types of light that you use on it. Like you can't just use regular light. It's really detailed. It's very deep physics, and it works pretty well. But that gives you a benchmark. You can run your CFD code and say, okay, my code is working okay for this, so now I'll start making changes. So like maybe they put a model in a wind tunnel of a car, and you tested your CFD against what they got, and everybody says, okay, it's good. So then in your model you start changing, like the mirrors, you move the mirrors off, you change the way the shape of this is, so then they start buying into your model more, and you're doing a design in the computer before you actually build anything. So there's some codes
proving that your code with your model of the car that you had matched your actual values.
Yeah.
It is making sure that your code is accurate enough.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess mainly what I was asking more about was that like the strips that were above that car?
Yeah.
Were they just individual lasers?
No, those were individual smoke dump points right there. So if you look,
how do you get the light behind only that dump point?
Well, I think what he's got is, if you look back here, he's got a light source down low that reflects off that, and then you visually see it.
Okay.
So I think it's just, on this one, it's just a visualization thing. So you see the two reflections at the floor there.
The tires.
And I think that's what it is. And if he moved them in the wrong place, the light would be in your eyes, and it would kind of take away the. Yeah.
I guess that's what I was trying to ask as well. But it's still cool to know about the paint.
Yeah. There's a lot of.
behind it.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I mistyped this. There's a code that you can actually just go download this thing. Okay, cookie disclaimer. Okay, you can actually just go download this. I used this years and years ago, and you can go through here. Let's see if I can find. Here, I'll do it this way. There are plenty of. I probably should have just gone to OpenFOAM. Here we go. Okay, introduction to OpenFOAM. Actually, I have a couple of bad videos for myself. A complete OpenFOAM tutorial. My videos are.
Audiences agree. The most amazing theatrical experience ever.
Today's video will be a tutorial on how to run your first custom CFD simulation using OpenFOAM.
I don't know.
When I was first trying to learn OpenFOAM, I went on YouTube and looked up the tutorial. Unfortunately, many of the videos I found simply showed how to execute one of the preloaded sample problems. What I needed was a video that showed you how to import a mesh, set up a problem, execute the case,
I don't know how.
Evaluate the problem you are in.
So here he is, he's setting up. This is something, let's see. You can't see all of it, but here he's drawing
What's
his
the
model.
basic sketches?
So he's drawing his model. Looks like he's got it.
Set the extrude to a
Comes
fluid
in,
and
ramps
exit out as
down.
a design modeler.
You get to the point, okay, so he's showing all this. You get into dumping it. Uh-oh, free ebook, it disappeared.
Involves opening
Okay,
every
now-
file and making sure that the
Now
names
he's
of the
showing
boundary
you how to
conditions,
import that
saving frequency, etc. Just play around,
file format. And then
visually
everything.
inspect that all of the boundary conditions are in fact correct.
This is something called ParaView, which is a free. There's a lot of free software out there these days. So ParaView, it looks like he started it about right there. So he comes in and he'll type in ParaView on this.
We can now check that the mesh, along with all of the appropriate boundary conditions,
Import the mesh. You import the solution, and eventually
to post.
you'll get your mesh, and you can get your. So there you go. He's making a little dynamic version there. It looks like it was started.
Then you navigate to the save animation button. Here's an animation from a more simple simulation I ran earlier. I hope you'll try this procedure using different geometries, boundary conditions, and solvers. Maybe try to create a velocity contour plot of the flow past the cylinder using the SimpleFoam solver. To conclude, I hope you got something out of this. I put this video together because I found it extremely difficult to find a high-quality, comprehensive, and generalizable tutorial for OpenFOAM when I first started.
So
Thank you for watching. Please like the video and share it. As always, if you have any questions or recommendations, leave them in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Goodbye.
I have no idea what else. Okay, OpenFOAM.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff out there on this. So let me hit this thing and see where I'm at in here. Okay, so then I think that's pretty much it. Then we were down into references. And so that's essentially all that is. It's basically recognizing that you look at your flow stream differently. You look at things differently in fluids than you do in mechanics. In mechanics, your part just deflects a little bit. So you're not having to track it around. So it might, say you have a part that's vibrating. Well, it's not, the particles in there are not going to go off into the next building, but the flow particles here could actually leave this building and end up over in Doc Bryan. And you'd have to track every single air molecule to see, but there is a good chance that air particles from there ended up here and vice versa. But that's not going to happen in mechanics. And so fluid mechanics is kind of weird like that. And the fact that you have that can happen gives you a problem of nonlinear. And that's where they always say the butterfly effect, that one thing that changes in one place can change across the world. And that's really true. And the reason being is that nonlinearity can, over time, you can have a nonlinearity that happens, and then over time it grows and grows and grows, and its effect grows across everything. So fluid mechanics has that because the particles are fluid. They just fly around all over the place. So
that's just like hydraulic systems. Hydraulics work until you bust a leak somewhere in that system.
yeah,
And the whole thing goes to piss in a handbasket.
right.
Because it just won't work because of that one particular point is too weak. Your perfectly good cylinder has now got an airlock in it, and it's not going to function.
Yeah. And there's a lot.
Is that what I'm getting out of that? Like,
Well,
what